Welcome to Crossover the Pond, brought to you by 21 Media Productions and Sports Social. He's Drew Lasker, I'm Josh Sexton. This is another episode as we continue our NBA basketball journey. A short, hezzy tween and stutter step away here in the UK. Drew, lots to get into for the both of us today. Bam Adebayo's 83-point game. I'm not sure if you heard about that, if you'd seen like a few things by it. It's
Not quite.
not been very much talked about. So we will get into giving our thoughts on that from over here across the pond. We'll talk about Jayson Tatum's return as well, because we've not had a chance to cover that yet. And then a few key matchups really for championship contention stakes, for playoff stakes in general, I guess, up to and including Drew's Houston Rockets and the Los Angeles Lakers last night. So we will tackle all of that in today's episode. But of course, before we do get into any of that, Drew, the most important question I have to ask is, how you doing, my man?
I'm great, man. The NBA season is just like, I was just reflecting on this earlier, Josh. I'm like, I had to think back and say, dude, have we been covering this since the very beginning of the season? Because it seems impossible that we are entering the last 15, 14 games for some team in the last month. A month away from now, we'll be talking about the playoffs. And this thing, I know it doesn't feel that way for the players because it's Groundhog Day, you're traveling, you're playing. But for us as fans, man, this thing has really flown by.
Yeah, and you've been busy. You had a busy week covering a couple of games last week. To me, this season has felt like a lifetime, to be honest, because I've lived so many different chapters with the Clippers, especially. But I've almost kind of like, because of doing Crossover the Pond, my Clippers fandom. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. My Clippers
Ooh.
fandom has felt like it's something we're going to address as we go into the episode. But my Clippers fandom has felt like it's sort of separate to the wider NBA coverage, and because I have to be a bit unbiased about the Lakers now, whereas previously I could just like shit on the Lakers constantly, so I feel like I have to like tone that down a little bit now. So we will come on to talk about whether we're going to give the Lakers, or I'm going to give the Lakers especially, a little bit of credit in this episode. But Drew, tell us about a couple of those games you covered last week, because Amazon had you working, man. You were really out there in those London streets.
I covered Timberwolves and the Warriors.
Right.
And it was good to see the Timberwolves get back on track. They were on a 3-game slide before then, and it was just their defense was just awful up until that point. They had won 5 in a row, then lost 3 in a row, and then picked one up against the Warriors, which, I think I just saw something on X recently about the Warriors. 93% of their salary is set on the sidelines and street clothes. So, that's a great bounce back game for them. But then they go off and lose to OKC. And so the other game I covered on Thursday was the 76ers and Pistons.
Right.
And again, the Pistons was able to bounce back after losing 4 in a row against the 76ers. So the narrative in my games that I cover for Prime were two championship caliber teams, you could say, bouncing back against two teams who are just like the 76ers had all their big three sat on the bench as well, with Maxey and Embiid and Paul George and those guys. And so it was nothing really. It wasn't one of those exciting weekends, but business as usual.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you look at the sort of games, the other games that are on the slates in those nights especially, and there's the Thunder Celtics one, which has been a kind of, I guess the majority of the narrative that has been around the Thunder for so long now is that they're leaning into their villain arc a little bit. There's, the foul baiting, all these different kinds of things. I had my friend who's a big Boston Celtics fan messaging me the next morning, sending me all these clips of like the Thunder foul baiting. There's the one on where Shea kind of does like the pull through move, but there's like no contact from Jordan Walsh, and there's one that's like a bit closer to the basket as well at the other end. And that's I'm enjoying the Thunder leaning into their villain arc. Like, I think it's always, it always is the kind of thing that happens. Like, I was listening to Dwayne Wade on the Zach Lowe show recently, and he was kind of talking about after that first championship that him, LeBron, and Chris Bosh won together, like the next season they were doing that, and it almost didn't suit LeBron. Like, LeBron ended up like flaming out in the finals. I think that was when they lost to the Dallas Mavericks, actually, maybe that season after. And it's like he was almost saying like we were pretty cool guys and everyone liked us, and then suddenly they didn't because we were the people to be got at. And that's kind of how it feels like with the Thunder. And that's, I was thinking that off the back of Shea's game winner against the Nuggets. I was thinking off the back of this win against the Celtics as well, where it feels like anyone is talking about anything but the basketball at the moment. Even with Shea's record, like Shea on this 20-point game record, and it feels like he's kind of hunting it because they're keeping him on in fourth quarters of blowouts and stuff like that. And Yeah, I mean it's been a week, I should say, Drew, for hunting records, which of course we'll come on to talk about a little bit more. But I don't know, I'm kind of enjoying the Thunder going from these like really likable young guys to, oh no, suddenly we don't like these guys. Like we want to get at the Kings.
Well, if you think about any NBA dynasty in its history, I think it's fair to say that the Bulls back in the early 90s were the only dynasty that were liked. Maybe I'm being biased because I was an MJ fan, but even the Warriors were, really liked until they brought on KD, and then they became the villains as well. So you're starting to see OKC kind of enter that threshold. But very impressive win against Boston, especially when you go 11 for 44 from downtown, 25%, and still be able to get it done. And this record of most consecutive 20-point games is quite incredible when you put it in its context, because all it takes is one day where you just don't feel like it. Think about yourself when you go, your day-to-day life, and you wake up and you have those days where you just don't feel like going to work, you know, or all it takes is one jump shot, because we know that Shea, he flails a lot, he falls a lot. All it takes is him to land on one ankle, during the first quarter. Or all it takes is a team that just really put the clamps on them, like we almost seen the other night. And to consistently get that done day in, day out in the NBA is pretty incredible when you think about a guy. Yes, he shoots a lot of free throws, but he shoots a lot of jump shots as well. It's not like Shea is getting to the rim and shooting layups every time. Like, he's consistently knocking down 15 footers and step back threes. So again, there's a lot of records that's been broken and been talked about over the past week. And, this is the narrative we're trying to change with the NBA, is giving guys their flowers, because it's the only association in the world where, guys are shitting on each other all the time, especially ex-players. Let's celebrate the game more. And this is really incredible. Anytime your name could be in the same breath of Will Chamberlain, you've done something pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I think me and you are unanimous in our verdict that he should win the regular season MVP this year. It's not to discredit anything that Jokic has done. Jokic to me is the best basketball player in the world, but the MVP is a regular season award. And I want to sort of touch on that point about the regular season thing, because it's where it's definitely confusing for me, coming from from an English football background. Really, is this record with Shea, and how there's a couple of conditions on it, because the minute the playoffs come around, this record kind of evaporates, and I think there's 3 games where he's got below 20 points in the playoffs. And like, I'm not on the haterade thing. I'm not, some people I feel like, who cover the NBA and follow the NBA can be pocket watchers, and they can be, can be drinking that haterade. But for me, like, that's like, it's confusing because it's only a regular season record, and it's confusing because the cutoff for the amount of minutes he has to play in that game is 28 and things. We don't really have that in English football. But like you say, Drew, I can still appreciate the greatness. And I was even saying this to my friend, because when he came on being like, oh, like this foul here like wasn't a foul and this one wasn't. I was like, well, I mean, the one with the Jordan Walsh thing, like, there's contact on the lower half. Like, yeah, yes, there's no contact on the hands, and I feel like that's what we look at, because we're always watching the basketball, especially when we're looking at replays. We're watching the basketball, and that's up here because Shea's kind of doing the rip through move. But lower down, Jordan Walsh is like almost come into guard position, and he's connected with the lower half of Shea. But then again, like you say, Drew, he shot 72% from the field in this game against the Boston Celtics. Only shoots 8 free throws, which I know is like more than most people tend to shoot. Jaylen Brown shoots 14 free throws in this game, by the way. So Shea shoots well, just over half of what Jaylen Brown shoots in this game. Finishes with 35 points. I feel like the thing we can tend to do as NBA fans is jump on bandwagons, or because we're trying to address narratives and we're trying to be reasonable to each other, we're going, yeah, okay, like Shea is a bit of a foul baiter, but like for me, there is an element of foul baiting that is skill based. Shea is clearly one of probably, if not the most skillful player in the league. He's just absolutely incredible. And if we're going to constantly focus on the wrong things, we're going to distract ourselves from too many of the right things. And that was why I was almost pleased with that game win against the Nuggets, because going into that, me and you have been saying all season the Nuggets are a team that could beat the Thunder in the playoffs. Really, I was looking forward to it being like a really like key playoff matchup. So this is back on last Monday now, 129, 126, and Shea hits the game winner. And it was just like incredible to see that because again, it's one of those moments where like you can't do anything to take that away from Shea. It's clean. There's no foul baiting in it. He just hits a great shot, a great three to win the game. And I personally just like similar to what you said, I want to come on here and celebrate Shea's greatness and that of the OKC Thunder because yes, they're not going to break that Warriors record, but just another incredible season from them.
It's an artistry to be able to draw fouls. If you look at the history of the game, all of the superstars have had a knack of getting to the free throw line where you go Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, one of those guys that's in the top 10 of scoring. It's part of the game, you know, and so for the defense, it's your job to be disciplined. And when you look at the free throw attempts this season, Luka Doncic is actually number one. I don't hear anybody complaining about Luka free throw attempts. They complain more about his complaining, but you never hear anybody or you don't ever see a narrative about Luka taking too many. He's taking 10 free throws a game. He's taking one more free throw than Shea. Shea's number two at 9.1. Luka is 10.1. So, you know, I thought it was poetic justice against the Denver Nuggets, against Joker, those guys going back and forth, and him hitting the game winner and it being a three and being nothing to do about a free throw and it being about him getting a bucket. And it's we just have to understand that with any superstar, any great player, that's always going to be something to complain about. And again, you can go down the list. With Kobe, it was he shot too much. You know what I mean? With MJ in his early days, it was he wasn't a team player. So there's always a narrative to create the villain side of a superstar, and that's what brings the talking points of the league. You know, so I'm not mad at it, but there's no discrepancy. There's no argument of Shea's talent.
That was strange, Drew, because you brought up Kobe Bryant there and you didn't talk about the clear now top three of all time, which is Wilt, Bam, Kobe. I want to address this Bam Adebayo situation because again, when you talk about narratives and things that just come from like moments of greatness, like I really enjoyed Eric Spoelstra's reaction to it. I've really enjoyed actually most of the players around the league's reaction to it. Like I heard a couple of the Clippers guys being asked about it and just being like happy for Bam and not looking to like shit on it or throw shade on it in any way. I heard Benedict Mathurin sort of say like, "Oh, you want the PR answer or you want the real answer?" And like it was clear that he was kind of playing into it, but then he went on to say like, really happy for Bam. It seems like Bam is sort of universally liked in the league. And listen, like if you come up against a team like the Washington Wizards, who are clearly leaning so much into their youth, and listen, we're all kind of talking about the tanking thing and thinking about ways we can eradicate tanking and stuff. And the Washington Wizards have got two vets there that are sat in street clothes because they are tanking. So if you want to look at anyone here and draw bad narratives from this game, for me, it should be that the Washington Wizards could have had Anthony Davis or Trae Young out there and could have stopped Bam Adebayo scoring 83. I mean, less so Trae Young because there's obviously no defense there, but Anthony Davis could have definitely stopped Bam Adebayo from scoring 83 points. So kind of don't want to hear the narratives of like, being like reductive of it or like especially that article in The Athletic, which I thought was like one of the just genuine one of the strangest articles I've ever read about how when Bam got to 81 he should have stopped for respect of Kobe and stuff. Like I'm
Yeah,
not having that. It's like it's corny as anything.
yeah.
And I'm pleased for Bam that he broke this record again as someone who I feel like I'm leaning into what you were saying there, but someone who didn't necessarily like Kobe's game or Kobe's approach to the game all that much, or just that Lakers team in general, really. For me, like I'm quite happy seeing records like that get broken and get broken by guys who are universally liked around the league. So again, I came away from this just feeling like let's just celebrate a moment of greatness from a player we didn't expect it from because it becomes a great storyline for us to talk about and we don't have to do the they were fouling up whatever and doing this and whatever. Like let's just appreciate this great moment.
I love what Steve Nash said on the Amazon Prime coverage, that because the only annoying part for me was the final 4 minutes. But what Steve Nash said is that with any record, there's always a goofy component, and
Yep.
he's right.
Even with
I mean,
Kobe's,
all
there
you gotta do
was.
is, yeah, all you gotta do is think about LeBron James. With the 10 points or more, how many games has he stayed in when the game was 20 points, 30 points, game was won? I mean, we can go up and down the list. Even Shea, continuing his record the other night when the Thunder had the game in hand, and obviously he's chasing his 20 points. There's always some sort of goofy component to it, but the energy needs to be pointed towards the Washington Generals. I mean, the Wizards, excuse me. Is he had 30 in the first quarter. He had 42 at halftime. Now that's okay. Like a guy gets hot, like 40 is incredible at halftime. I mean, 40 in the end of a game is amazing.
Mm.
Where was the conversation at halftime, even if you're tanking it, hey, enough's enough now? Like, but he goes on and scores, you know, pretty much the same amount of points in the second half, like basically 240 balls. That's unacceptable. So all of that energy needs to go towards the Washington Wizards and, denying him the ball or making someone else beat you. Like, where are the adjustments? And it is embarrassing to them, and I'm glad they got to live with it. And maybe this is something that I saw on Twitter, is that this is how you solve tanking, is that you just start embarrassing the shit out of teams. Like, if you want to lose, no, I'm not taking my guy out because I'm up 30. No, I'm not going to stop at 81 so I can. No, I'm going to put my foot in your throat until your eyes pop out of your socket. And so stop tanking.
Yeah, I absolutely agree
I'm
with
not a
with
violent
stop.
person, I promise you.
Yeah, that was all meant metaphorically. We should point out to the listeners and viewers there. But no, I agree. Like the putting teams to the sword, and like I want to see more guys breaking these kind of records. Like we're in an NBA era now where offense is ginormous. I mean, like again, I'm going to give the Lakers a bit of credit for their run shortly, but the Lakers offense has been incredibly impressive all season. It's the thing that's literally got them to this point now. I think so. You're in an era where guys like Luka and guys like Trey Young and guys, anyone around the league really, it feels like, especially because you've now seen Bam do it, could score like 70 points or could score 80 points. Loads of these guys have scored in the 70s before. So yeah, I kind of don't want to hear Bam shouldn't have done this or the Heat shouldn't have done this. Like the Washington Wizards it shouldn't have took until the second half for them to throw double teams at him, or they should have, played more denial and things like that. There's ways in which they could have done it. And again, like I don't want to hear the free throw thing, because you watch every single one of those fouls that Bam had. They're all legit fouls. Like Washington couldn't defend him without fouling. So what's Bam gonna do? Just like stop getting like into the paint and stop getting in the way of those? Like no, they're all legitimate fouls. So yeah, again, I don't really want to hear any of that kind of narrative. I'm pleased for him and for the Miami Heat organization, because it's one of those strange seasons, Drew, and I kind of called those playing teams in the East especially out for being, I called them bums. I think it was in the last sort of week or so, because they just always seem to be in the play, in like the Miami Heats of the world, the Atlanta Hawks of the world. Like I got a little bit sick of those like East playing teams especially, but if you're the Miami Heat and you're basically a lock for the play-in, unless, I mean, Toronto are in free fall at the moment, but so there's maybe a chance to replace them. But if you're just in play-in purgatory forever, how can I blame you for like seeking out little moments of joy and little records in one night? Like it's stuff that keeps the NBA regular season interesting, and we're constantly looking for new ways to keep the NBA regular season interesting. And Bam Adebayo, who's like a 16-point scorer throughout his career per game, like him scoring 83 points, whatever you want to say, it's got people talking, and it's got people talking for positive reasons mostly. Unfortunately, some for negative reasons, and I'm just kind of not here for the negativity, similar to the Shea thing.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you got to go and make those free throws. That's pretty impressive. And Paulo Banchero did the same thing to Washington last week as well without Alex Sarr in there. Like, they are weak inside, so why not beat them up inside in the paint? I mean, I think the Orlando Magic has 62 paint points just recently. So, it is what it is. And I think the bottom line is, it wasn't really about the record. It was more so about who got the record. And I think it rubbed people the wrong way that it wasn't a bona fide household name superstar.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you've segued me nicely into speaking about one bona fide household superstar name there in Jayson Tatum, because we saw his return last week. It was actually before we last recorded. We obviously just did our sort of bespoke episode with Joe. If you've not listened to that, I recommend you go back and listen to it, because it was it was great fun, great to chop it up with Joe, talk about the NBL and the NBA, especially over there in Australia too. So, yeah, Drew, Jayson Tatum coming back looking kind of the way I expected him to look, but beyond my expectations, to be honest, in the sense that I kept talking about, people who are worried about the Celtics and how it's gonna fit and how it's gonna look. They had no reasons to worry about that kind of fit, but Tatum impressed me in terms of like the athleticism that he still showed, all these things that he kind of like, well, he's come back from an injury, so it may take him a little time to get back to the speed. Like, he was doing this on that first night against the Dallas Mavericks, and it was like a cool game anyway, because obviously, Cooper Flag being from Maine, I heard Bill Simmons say it felt like the whole of Maine was in the house in Boston, Massachusetts that night, but this game was just like a cool game to watch for so many reasons. But like the coolest thing about it was that Jayson Tatum just like, I don't even want to say roll back the clock because it's not like Jayson Tatum's like an old dude or anything, but like he was just absolutely hooping his ass off out there. And the dunks, the blocks, the step back threes, like there was that one sequence where I think he'd assisted a teammate, gone up the other end, got a block, and then came down the other end and got a step back three. And it was just incredible to see Jayson Tatum looking as sprightly as he did.
Very, very impressive. I dealt with a lot of hamstring issues in my career, and those first couple games back, you're just very unsure. You're just testing everything out, and it takes time to build trust in your body. So a big shout out has to go out to his training staff and the people behind the scenes, which he's already shouted out because their look from my eye test, because I stayed up and watched the first half of this game, was there was no trust pot process. I mean, he came out on the court immediately trusting his ability and most importantly, trusting his body. He obviously started that game off a little slow from a rush standpoint, even airballed a three from the top of the key. But all it took was that one shot to go in, which was a putback dunk. And then the very next play, he responds with, this is what impressed me the most about anything, is that think about how he tore his Achilles, was stepping backwards, that load step, right? So you think by all means necessary, that's going to be the last box you're going to check. But right away, he goes into a step back corner three ball, putting all that force and weight on one foot, one leg, and then being able to step back comfortably and knocking it down. So I love the fact that it says a lot about his mentality that there were no restrictions. I mean, from a physical standpoint. And, what I'm seeing now is, against Washington, 14 rebounds. He had 12 rebounds against Dallas. That is my biggest thing that I look for when people come back from injuries. It's not necessarily the points because you can find ways to score, but rebounding, it consists of you going in there and mixing it up, and you could possibly land on someone's foot. And so for him to go in there and be gobbling up rebounds as well is telling me that he's already back, and he's going to continue to get better and better and better and more comfortable within his game. And right around the playoff time, he might be 100% Jayson Tatum.
Yeah, and it was a shame really that he had to miss the first leg of that back to back between against the Thunder and the Wizards, because that was the one really that you kind of wanted to see him in, like those
Yeah.
two, like the team that I'm expecting to come out of the East and the team that I'm still expecting to come out the West, even though there's others who I think could definitely usurp. Like I'm watching the San Antonio Spurs so closely and hoping there's a a Western Conference Finals matchup between them and the Thunder to come, because I would really like to see that over a 7 game series, but these two teams who I'm expecting to come out of either conference, like I'd have loved to see them gone up against each other full strength, and it wasn't quite to be just because it's they're still managing back from that injury, but I'm looking at those two in particular, Drew, and I don't know how you feel because maybe you think there's someone else who might come out the East or someone else who might come out the West, but I think Boston matched up really well with them, and it's where I was saying that Joe Mazzulla is my coach of the year, because that's so impressive to the point I was like, I don't even know if Boston will be a playing team this season. To they're the ones that I'm almost saying like, oh, they actually match up really well against the OKC Thunder. Like they've got loads of big wings to throw at Shea, Jayson Tatum being one of them. It just feels like they are a team who could get something out of that series. And there's no one else that I'm really looking at, especially not in the East anyway, that I'm looking at and thinking like, oh, I could see how they would be able to keep Shea quiet, or I'm seeing how they'd be able to kind of do a thing where like they let Shea score, but they make sure everyone else stays quiet. Whereas like I can kind of imagine Boston doing either of those things because they're such a good defensive team. I'm kind of not expecting a ton of regression from guys like Neemias Queta and people like that, even though it is their first proper playoff series, because their jobs are kind of made so simple by how much talent is on that roster, and by, it's not to discredit them when I say that their jobs are made simple, because they're still incredible at doing those sort of more simple jobs. But when you've got guys like Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum who the scoring burden is on, you've got guys like Peyton Pritchard who've scored in playoff series before. Derek White should always throw in there as a scorer for the Celtics as well. If you're Anime Cater, you know that your role is just, I've got to stop anybody getting to this basket by hook or by crook. And, Isaiah Hartenstein will be a big X factor in that series. But if I'm Chet Holmgren, I'm like, I don't want to go into the chest of Neemias Cater every time, because I'm not sure if my slender body can handle that.
Yeah, just think about the markability of this matchup, right? You got the best front offices in the NBA. You got arguably the best talent in the NBA. But then the biggest storyline of them all is which young team is going to be the dynasty, right? Because it could still be considered a dynasty for Boston, because you almost have to put an asterisk on last year because Jason Tatum's injury, right? So do they pick up where they left off? And then, OKC having that same opportunity. So this is I think we're trending in trajectory in that direction.
Yeah, which kind of brings us up to today, Drew. Like there was a game that happened last night, not necessarily between contenders. At least I'm not putting them in the same bracket of contention as OKC and the Boston Celtics yet. But again, I've teased it throughout this episode. There's a point that they're gonna, maybe make me put these guys in contention, which is the Los Angeles Lakers knocking off your Houston Rockets in the Monday night game. Good for so many reasons. Good because there was obviously the narrative going into it of the Clint Capella versus DeAndre Ayton game. I can't say that either guy really put on for their set. If you look at the sort of box score at the very least, both kind of did the things that you'd want your center to do around that. Kevin Durant has a pretty, torrid night in the end. And I think if Kevin Durant has a torrid night with how short this rotation is at the moment, an 8-man, and Josh Okogie even played only 7 minutes in that. So it's such a heavy load these Houston guys are having to bear this season with all the injuries and things. But, the Lakers go 9-1 with this win. And you said, Luka Doncic has not really been talked about how many free throws he's getting this season. And I think it's because people are kind of like, there's times where I don't like watching Luka Doncic play, because he can be, get into it too much with the referees and be whining away and stuff like that. But when Luka is like on it in terms of like good basketball play, there's few players in the league who are better to watch than him. And Austin Reeves has turned up all season. Again, he probably kind of struggled last night, put him in a sort of similar boat to KD, 0 of 8 from 3. Kevin Durant was 0 of 3 from 3. But Luka Doncic gets it done for the Los Angeles Lakers. And I've been hearing people talk about like the things that may let the Lakers down in the playoffs. And for me, it is defense. Like that kind of goes without saying at this point. But one of the things that people are saying, like, oh, this might let them down, is like the shooting of Marcus Smart, for example, because players might leave him open. Well, Marcus Smart answers that back with 3 of 7 from 3, 43% last night, and 11 points. And if you've got a guy like Marcus Smart who can just do, like, not even that, like 33%, like the 33 that LeBron got in this game would have been fine for Marcus Smart, you would absolutely take that, because that's the sort of thing that can just about get the Lakers over the hump and give them a deep run in these playoffs.
Yeah, the national media is hilarious when it comes to the Lakers, but just 2 weeks ago, it was everyone on television screaming about the Lakers have no chance, how poor they are, and then all of a sudden, here comes the Lakers. So it's kind of fun to follow that wave of emotion that the Los Angeles Lakers create over the course of the season. But this is why you can't write the Lakers off, because as much energy that is put into their lack of defense, it's about timely stops. If you can get timely stops, right? Because let's look at the NBA where it is today. Like, you're not going to stop most of these teams and great players, right? The talent is just too incredible. But if you can gobble up timely stops, that's all you need, because at the other side of it, good luck with trying to stop Luka every single possession when he's on, right? When he's playing the way he's played now, where he's the Western Conference Player of the Week. And then you got a sidekick in Austin Reeves, who can get downhill, can get hot in a hurry. And then all of a sudden, you got LeBron James just there in the weeds, lying in the dunker, and you just almost forget about him. So this is a team that, as much criticism as they get, I'm not too sure many teams would want to play them. Just like Denver did, since the addition of Luka Doncic, Lakers have taken over that matchup now, which a matchup that they just have not been able to beat Denver over the last couple of years. But since Luka's played, I think they're like 4-1, 5-1, something like that. And then on the other hand, the Rockets, again, it's been the same issues all season. When you get down to the nitty gritty, when you get down to the crunch, they all of a sudden are just unable to function a half court offense. They look discombobulated. There's a trend happening with Kevin Durant where he's casually turning the ball over. He's bringing the ball up the floor. They're throwing a double in the middle third. He's having to give it up. And I'm like, why is he bringing the ball up the floor? Like he should be going there, posting his flag right there at the mid post because it's harder to double there and he can start his attack with a live dribble in the back pocket. You know, he has already started this dribble, so he's limited in his options. So I would like Ime to get a lot more creative offensively in the fourth quarter because we've seen this time and time again. But it does come down to them not having options at the point guard position, and this is why, you know, a lot of people wrote off the Rockets when they lost Fred Van Fleet, and it just shows the importance of having a guy on your team that can create, who can set the table. You look at the contenders, you got Luca at the point of the attack that can set the table. You got Shea Alexander that can set the table. So for all these teams, you got Cade Cunningham, right? So all these major players, they have a table setter, and with the Rockets, that's what they lack because that's not Kevin Durant's forte. He's never been known as a table setter from the middle third or bringing the ball up. He's more of a throw it in, let him play out the mid post, and hit spray out the shooters or go into his bag. So you worry for the Rockets, but if you're a Lakers fan, you got to be really encouraged about what you're seeing as of late.
Yeah, the Lakers getting hot at the right time, and if you look at who the other teams are who are, on such good streaks at the moment, it's the OKC Thunder are also 9-1 in the last 10. The San Antonio Spurs 8-2 in their last 10. Even flipping over to the East, the Boston Celtics are 7-3, New York Knicks 7-3, Orlando Magic even now coming up with 7-3. It just feels like there's a couple of teams who are really getting hot at the right time. The Atlanta Hawks 10-0, by the way, is incredible. We're going to talk obviously a little bit more about that because we're hoping to get some special guests on over the next week or so. So we'll hold off on them for now because we're going to mostly do this on the contenders today. But that's where I sort of worry for the Rockets going into the playoffs, Drew. And I wonder if there's a bit of like mix and matching they can do. Where I know Reed Shepherd as a point guard is not like your traditional point guard. Like he's not necessarily that table setting kind of guy. Only 3.2 assists on the season this season. But I look at that starting five and I'm like, what would they lose going into the playoffs? When, by the way, rotations have already been so short throughout the season anyway, by just dropping Jabari Smith Jr. to the bench because he still can then bring you the kind of scoring pop that Reed Shepherd can bring you off the bench, but putting Reed Shepherd in that starting five. So you've got a guy who's kind of a little bit more of a ball handler, even if he's not necessarily that table setter for other guys. It means that Amen can get off ball, then it means that Kevin Durant can get off ball and you can find more useful ways. I mean, for Amen in the playoffs especially, like you're going to be so reliant on him for defense. So lessening the offensive load that he has to deal with. I don't know. I'm looking at that rotation, just wondering if there's a way to click that into place that just makes a little bit more sense for the kind of challenges you're going to come up against in the playoffs.
You know who's a comp that I haven't heard anybody talk about with Reed Shepherd on a championship caliber team of how you can use him like a John Paxson for the Chicago Bulls, of how they used to use him in the backcourt with Michael Jordan, right? He would bring the ball up, initiate the offense, and he wasn't a point guard. He wasn't anyone who had a shake and bake and was fancy, but the gravity he created with his three-point shooting created the space for MJ. And even ultimately, MJ deferring to him in that 93, NBA Finals against the Phoenix Suns when he kicked it out to Paxson. Paxson hit that shot to win it. So that's the kind of role that I would put Reed Shepherd in heading into the playoffs. I'm keeping him in the backcourt with Kevin Durant at all times because also from an energy standpoint, right? I just read an article on Cooper Flag about the respect level he has for a point guard now. he talked about he had never been so tired in his life when he ran the point guard at the beginning of the season. He was like, it takes so much energy just to bring the ball up from A to B, and that's without ball pressure, right? That's just an additional job. So, I'm seeing that same thing with KD. Like, I don't want to see him bring the ball up the floor. Reed Shepard has enough handle where he's not going to get the ball taken from him in the half court. I mean, in the back court. So I would love to see them put him in that Paxson role. I would love to see him have a bigger role. And you're right about Jabari Smith because, even though he shot 9 for 17 in this game, he's not a guy that you have to stay home with his 3-point shooting. He has been so streaky this season that you will almost live and die with the results out there. So I think that's a role the Rockets need to look into. Tari Eason, not sure what happened to his 3-point shooting. He was top 5 before he got injured, and he's just not been able to find his touch. But that's what worries me. Rockets takes the least amount of threes. At the beginning of the season, they were the most efficient. Now they're falling down to reality, 5 for 26. And then you just wonder, like, where else they're going to be able to generate consistent offense outside of Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and I was just looking at other games over the past week there, Drew, because there's obviously been a couple of contenders who play. We're going to save chat about the Detroit Pistons because, again, we've got some special guests coming up this week. So we're going to do a bit more of a deep dive into the Detroit Pistons when with a bit of a special episode that is coming later this week. But I was looking into the San Antonio Spurs as well because they lose to the Denver Nuggets on Thursday night. San Antonio Spurs have been interesting throughout the whole of this season, really particular interest to me because of those matchups with OKC around Christmas and things where we got to see maybe a bit of a preview of a Western Conference finals, but losing to this Denver Nuggets team, again, I said, like, I think they're warming up at the right time still because they're 8-2 in the last 10. They beat my Clippers the other night, albeit without Kawhi Leonard, which we're hoping is not going to be for too many games because the Clippers were rolling with Kawhi before that point. But like the Denver Nuggets, I find in such an interesting position. The San Antonio Spurs, I'm less worried about kind of losing this game. But the Denver Nuggets go through one week where they lose to the Lakers on a buzzer beater in overtime from Austin Reeves, and then beat the San Antonio Spurs. And I'm just kind of scratching my head because I feel like I know what I'm going to get for the San Antonio Spurs in the playoffs. And I've been talking about that. Well, we've been talking about this, Drew, all season, sort of worrying for these teams that are first-time playoff performers, whether there is going to be any kind of regression, whether the lights are going to be too bright. And I kind of don't see it with Detroit or San Antonio. Really. Like, I don't think there will be that lights too bright thing because I think they're probably like been warming up to this moment. They'll be prepared for it now, probably more so than we can consider. But I think the Detroit Pistons especially have drawbacks that I could see affect them in the playoffs, which is just the shooting. As I say, there'll be more things we'll get into a little bit later in the week. But with San Antonio, I don't necessarily see all the same kind of weaknesses. Like, I think they are set for a really deep playoff run. And then with Denver, like, I'm scratching my head so much because I'm like, again, everybody healthy and on their day. I don't really have any doubts about this team, but they really keep like flattering to deceive at the moment. There's some games where they look like they are the contenders that we think they are, and then there's some games where they just look, a good while off it. And I don't know whether to trust their sort of 5 seed position at the moment, whether they're a sleeper to actually be a bit more up in contention, or whether they should kind of be in this sort of second round of contenders with like a Los Angeles Lakers or even a Houston Rockets.
Yeah, I think with Denver is that they're just running out of time because they have been so injured. They've had so many guys out. They've had games where they've missed their entire starting 5. Jokic has missed a month. Jamal Murray has missed bits here and there. Aaron Gordon has missed time with that hamstring. Cam Johnson as well. Christian Braun with this ankle. And also, their young and exciting player, Peyton Watson, is still out. So I just think they're going to run out of time to build the necessary chemistry with their core because these teams in the West are too good. In the past, I think you can get away with Jokic being the best player, but now you got to have something else to the table. And you look at that Laker game specifically, Jamal Murray, 1 for 14. I worry about his inconsistency. So there's just so many questions with the Denver Nuggets. I mean, there's still a team that you got to be wary of, but I think that if they get in a position where it's a tight series or tight games, they don't have enough experience together this season, not experience overall because they are a championship team, but every season is new. Every piece, for example, Cam Johnson, he's a starter in that team. He hasn't won a championship. Does he know where to be uh, in the right spot in the crunch where the pressure, where the lights are bright? Does he know where that pass is coming from Jokic? And I'm just not sure. They could still be a surprise, but I'm just not sure. And when you talk about San Antonio, the one thing that I'm sure about is they are so versatile defensively. Those guards can get up in you, they can speed you up, and that's what I see San Antonio being able to get them through this lack of experience that everyone talks about, because the lack of experience is usually on the offensive side. The defense is what translate, and when you got a guy like Wemby who can erase mistakes, who can allow those guards to be more aggressive. And they can be ultra aggressive, right? Because they have a rotation of three of them. So there's no reason that Fox and Harper and Steven have to save themselves, because they can go hard. They got one more goon that's coming off the bench. So I really, really like what San Antonio brings to the table. And for Denver, I just worry about uh, the lack of availability that they had this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, plenty more narratives and storylines to come, I'm sure, over these next 15 games. Of course, me and Drew will be here every week to cover them. As I mentioned, there's going to be a little special episode at the back end of this week, so make sure you do stay tuned for that as well. And let us know what you thought. We'd love to hear sort of feedback and encourage conversations with all of this as well. So if you're a fan of any of these teams, hit up me, hit up Drew on social media, and let us know what your thoughts are on our takes and what your thoughts are on all of these contenders and so many of these interesting narratives, because the NBA is keeping on rolling into these playoffs now. But all that's left for me to do for this episode is to say, Drew, lead us out.
Yeah, continue this journey with us, guys. Again, we got some more exciting guests coming down the pipeline as we enter the final stretch into the playoffs, where it looks like it's going to be an incredible, incredible 2 months of basketball. So make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, and keep rolling with us, guys. Take care. See you next week.